As his xenobiology 401 students filed into the classroom, Captain Jake sat on the very back row, taking it all in. As if they were paying respects at their own burial, which, to be honest, given that we were discussing apex predator research today. Perhaps they were so. With much gratitude, the Galactic Academy welcomed Jake, the first exchange student from Earth, though. Thought it was more out of curiosity than genuine faith in people's intellect. Ultimately, it was humans that. From a planet that the rest of the cosmos kindly referred to as a Class 12 death planet, concerning which they mumbled in the dorms are like that terrifying planet where everything is out to get you. Jake came upon this standing. Very funny. The 7-foot-tall mantis-like monster known as Professor Quill has an ego twice. While he made significant adjustments to his holographic display, he clicked his mandibles. As a result of, was rather forthright from the start about his perception of Jake as either a clerical assistant or an intern in his advanced class. Mistake or a cosmic prank. Class, we're going to explore the scariest part of psychology of predators, with complex eyes that sparkled with something Jake could only call scholarly desire, our sense of hearing the terrifying screams that have developed into incapacitate prey in 17 distinct stellar systems, the crystalline creature known as Vex, who sat down next to him and started trembling with nervousness right away. The hues that her see-through body shifted between resembled uneasiness ringtone. We should have mental health professionals available for this session, Professor. Excellent. Issue Vex. Crease lent an affirmative nod. I have made arrangements for Dr. Nimbus to remotely check our stress levels, at the forefront. Anxiously fluffed her gills as she rode. The portable water tank of the aquatic had been filled to the full earlier today. Perhaps hopping to take cover under the sea in the event that things get too heated. Our species has experienced trauma over generations due to the deadly predators in the deep sea. Would you like me to? It is absurd, Terra, in the midst of our concerns is the sole approach to gain a scientific understanding of them. It was inevitable, Jake caved. Do you not understand that they are only recordings, aren't they? The speakers aren't genuinely capable of harming you. Everyone in the class looked up to him. Jake had begun to identify Professor Krill's twitching antenna as barely restrained anger. I see now. Our human exchange student, Krill said, sounding eerily like a very unpleasant doctor. Condition, on your lovely little death world, I assume you are used to being in perpetual fear. This may find uninteresting. In response, Jake simply shrugged. I mean, Colorado was my childhood home, so I've experienced a fair amount of unusual animal sounds. No way they're that dissimilar. As a result of the shock, Vex's crystal form became transparent. Are you saying that you willingly resided among the predators? Yeah, I guess. As a rule, that's the best place to find hiking paths. The professor. He snapped his teeth in a condescending manner. I believe you will discover that cosmic apex predators function according to a whole other realm than the charming beings that call your small, out-of-the-way planet home. Jake leaned back. Grinning like any predator on Earth, he sat back in his chair. Professor, we will investigate that. As he turned down the lights, Quill's compound eyes almost sparkled with excitement. Okay then, how about we? Let us embark on our exploration of the most obscure regions of predatory evolution. The holographic screen blinked to life, displaying a galactic map in a whirl, with red spots pulsating to indicate different danger zones. To Jake, it appeared to be an adolescent's effort to create a terrifying UI for a video game. Quill made a stunning announcement about our first specimen. Originating in the dark woods of 442B, unknown assailant has frightened. On 3 different occasions sought to colonize the area. Hear the noise that has sent whole towns into a frenzy if you dare. Fear, throughout the classroom, a low, warbling wail resounded. It was peaceful at first, then build up to a peak that resembled the gradual deflating of a piper accompanied by the gargling of mouthwash. Implications for Jake's. As soon as possible and found it absurd. Suddenly, Vex's vibrations were so intense that she appeared to be experiencing an existential crisis, resembling a tuning fork. Every hue of the rainbow flashed on her crystalline body, all the way down to a sickening green hue in the visible spectrum. With a thud, Era jumped into her water tank. The top 3 rows became soggy. As if she were an intellectual, just her horrified eyes stayed above the surface. Periscope of a nuclear submarine. Professor Quill, who seemed to be having a good time, mumbled about how fascinating it was. Take note of how the auditory processing areas of the prey species are targeted by harmonic frequencies, which induce paralysis via sheer dread. Jake put out his palm. That sounds like a moose with seasonal allergies, the professor said, his voice cut short by the warbling. Without warning, please forgive me. We have elk here that, while mating, produce sounds quite similar to that, in most cases. Indicates that they are crowded. They should be audible following a heavy downpour. The yet twitched. You are hearing the scream of a has devoured more than 3,000 living, breathing humans. Excuse me? Jake gave a deep nod, reflective. Therefore, similar to a accomplished moose. It seemed like was laughing or gurgling from her tank. Rapid breathing. None of these were obvious to Jake. Let us move on to something more, Quill said with an air of formality. A succession of clicking and chittering noises, gradually increasing in volume until they resembled an almost. This time Vex truly cracked, the ultrasonic screamer said, a hairline fracture going down her left arm as she solemnly stated, the Void Ripper of the Andromeda Spiral, its call. Jake found this description very distressing. Can break reinforced hull plate from 3 kilometers away, Jake said with a thoughtful nod. Oh, that's just like the summer cicadas here, but instead of ripping things to shreds, they only wreak havoc on our ability to sleep and scuba dive. Oh, it's harmless, Vex said as her crack widened slightly. Bomb your head when you're trying to barbecue. Little innocuous insects. They aren't very good at aiming and are often foolish, yet they make a deafening racket when they a little object about the size of your thumb. It seemed like someone had informed Professor Quill that his life's work was really a community. These are representatives of the highest evolutionary echelon of predators. Fear and death masterpieces. Yeah, I know Jake agreed, but have you ever attended a July family barbecue? It's essentially the same, except with extra potatoes. Salad and dubious relatives. Jake was becoming increasingly annoyed by the professor's rapid clicking of his teeth. Guaranteed unbridled scholarly fury, just what they needed. They were on the verge of the bright side. Professor Krill stood tall and proud, his compound eyes narrowing as he spoke. Quite well, the type of intellectual vindictiveness that had likely killed careers throughout 17 star systems. Maybe someone with your very significant experience would find my earlier examples too simplistic. Jake. I could almost taste the disdain seeping out of that statement. Things were going to heat up, Quill stated to the class. I bring to you the pinnacle of evolutionary fear, with the somnolence of someone pronouncing a death sentence. The sound. That prompted the evacuation of all inhabitants from 3 distinct space stations. The cries that prompted the professor's mining consortium will avoid facing the source of a 1 trillion credit asteroid field by abandoning it. The Shadow's dying cry was witnessed as the manipulator arms gracefully moved over his controls. Furry friend of no sentient being has ever survived exposure to this noise unharmed. Jake's ears pricked up. Sincere curiosity, this seemed good. Then the presenters started up, and all of a sudden the whole lecture hall was accompanied by the most terrifying, deafening, terrifying noise that has ever been heard in the history of our galaxy. It began as a deep groan that appeared to emanate from the darkest depths of hell, before ascending to the sound of a whale's piercing scream, reminiscent of a dying person. Screaming as 1,000 damned souls are carried into hell, Vex didn't just give up this time. Entirely broken, her crystalline body shattering into 1,000 dazzling fragments that strewn over the floor as she screamed out 17 distinct harmonic frequencies, causing Terra's water tank to start rapidly boiling as, while submerged, she let out a series of gasps that like the most horrifying jacuzzi imaginable. Not only that, but some of the Jake neglected to note the names of other kids who were exhibiting medical symptoms. One of them had even turned an frightening hue of purple and seemed to be dripping some sort of luminescent fluid from his ear holes. The noise reached a peak, emitting an ear-piercing screech that triggered the building's backup systems, dousing everything in flashing red lights as if the building itself were experiencing a nervous breakdown. Jake, interpersonal communication. Student from Earth, the small dead planet, started giggling uncontrollably. It wasn't a mild giggle, nor was it an appropriate academic expression. His head cocked back and his eyes welled up with tears as he chuckled. "Oh, come on." The horrible noise suddenly stopped. Jake, in between spasms of laughing, wheezed. "That's just a cougar having a bad day." As soon as the danger signal ceased blinking, the entire lecture hall became silent, but for Jake's incessant laughter and the... Professor Krill halted, his complex eyes fixed on the sound of Vex's crystalline fragments descending to the floor. Fixed on Jake with an intense gaze, as if to reveal that all your scientific beliefs had been proven incorrect. "A cougar," Quill's voice sounded like. Hardly audible, yes, mountain lion, puma, distinct species, yet very similar. Their precise sound indicates anger or the desire for a fight, so Jake wiped his eyes while maintaining a smile. The Colorado Rockies were my childhood camping grounds, and the song has been the background music for all of my family's vacations since I was a kid. Ever underwent. However, regarding the claims of psychological suffering, it is shocking. Jake remarked with a smile. "The first time you hear it, it scared the living daylights out of me when I was 8 years old and had to go potty outside at 2 in the morning in the tent. It's something you grow accustomed to. My dad used to say, if you can hear them, they're probably not." After you, Tara's head sprang out of her tank like a traumatized person when they stopped talking. "Periscope, you spent your childhood in the company of these beings." "Well, not quite. The closer we went to sharing a zip code, the more secluded they were, except when somebody left food out or got in the way of it. Then things started to become exciting for Mom and the cubs. Professor Quill's antenna started shaking so badly that they appeared as though they may come crashing down. Are you saying that your species lives side by side with predators?" Jake casually shrugged. "It's not like we live side by side. More like, unless someone else says otherwise, we just act like the other doesn't exist. Anything foolish. It usually turns out okay." He stopped thinking, although in hindsight. Regarding that matter, it's likely that Earth is home to even more terrifying creatures than mountain lions. Are you interested in learning about Australia?" The fact that his surviving students were gasping for air told him that they were dead set against hearing. Jake leaned back in his seat and said, "You know what? I just have this feeling that I'm going to spill the beans about Australia anyway." As he sat there with the smug satisfaction of someone prepared to make everyone's day miserable, let me give you some perspective on this. In the vast spectrum of Earth's predators, the mountain lion you just heard of is just a domestic cat with concerns about worry. The pupils in Professor Quill's compound eyes twitched. "Could you kindly inform me whether I'm overstating the situation?" "Oh. Very far from that, Professor. You see, mountain lions are really rather courteous about the fact that they are ambush predators. Entire process of murdering. They ambush their prey silently, dispatch them quickly, and everyone returns home content. Well, not the deer, since you just can't cook, and without scrambling any eggs." Vex squeezed out a few pieces from the crystal mound she was reassembling on the floor. "Gentle hunters, aren't they? Now I'll tell you about grizzly bears, Jake's." As a number of kids clearly flinched, the grin spread across his face. "These guys are nothing more than 800 of savage fury, terrible attitude, and sharp claws. Clad in a fur coat that scoffs at bullets, they can outrun humans at 40, scale trees, and more. They outswim the majority of people, and in general, they're just better at being humans than we are." Once again, Tara was submerged entirely, but Jake could make out terrifying bubbles emerging from her tank. However, this time there was the exciting part, Jake added with a smile. For fun, people set up tents in grizzly bear habitats. Spend money to spend the night in a tent made of canvas around monsters that could smash a compact vehicle. And Jake hadn't bothered to discover the name of one of the slug-like kids who had made a sound reminiscent of a balloon bursting and slithered its way to the door. In other words, Professor Krill didn't stop him. Jake stated, "Great white sharks are much bigger and badder than bears," as he warmed up to the idea. "Here we have 20 feet of pure murdering machine that has spent the last 400 million years hunting its murderous skills. The scent of even a little amount may be detected by them. A 3-meter-long pool of blood gnaw through a steel cage, and then leap 15 feet into the air like a toothy missile," Professor Quell cautiously stated, Surely your race avoids coastal regions where these animals reside. Jake snorted with laughter. Leaves them alone, dear professor. Pioneered a whole new activity, surfing, that entails, essentially, floating on a piece of fiberglass while donning a wetsuit that transforms us into their preferred meal. Every now and again, people. There will be contests. The rest of the class was gazing at him with a terrified expression. I normally only watch them when there's a very horrific car crash. Hold for a second, Jake, I have more. Speech tapping into his inner infomercial host. Australia is still up in the air. What takes place in Australia? When a whole continent makes the decision to focus on murder, their spider population is so large that swiftly eliminates you. Spiky serpents with enough poison to kill 100 people in a single bite. On top of that, they're hostile enough to pursue you. To pass the time, the aquatic organism known as jellyfish is essentially a scumbag. Also, crocodiles that are very. Basically, they turn alligators into therapy dogs. About 60% of Vex was back together again, and she was now resonating as a damaged tuning fork. If this is the case, how can people live? Planet, Jake said. Oh, that's the best part, with a mischievous gleam in his eyes. We don't merely exist. We do really well. The Aussies are known to move poisonous snakes about by just grabbing them by the scruff of the neck. Providing grocery shopping assistance to an elderly neighbor, hosting barbecues in crocodile habitat, and coming up with a game known as rugby, which is essentially regulated physical contact played on grass grounds. Professor remains still, his antenna drooping like a withered plant, as if the whole grass is out to get them. Blooms, and now, Professor Jake leaned down and added, "This is going to really bake your academic brain." Approaching in a conspiratorial fashion, what I have just described is a typical Tuesday in human terms. Afternoon diversion. We don't only cohabit with top predators, we proactively pursue them. We fork over cash to swim beside them. Predatory fish. We traverse bare territory on foot, and we set up tent in areas where mountain lions howl non-stop. Holiday. He held his breath for dramatic effect, observing as his remarks soaked into the minds of all living things that contemplated it. Humans don't dread predators, Professor. We are the moderately aggressive houseplant that poses the greatest harm. Predators, when we feign civility, it helps with dinner conversation and the lecture. There was complete silence in the hall, to the point where Jake could make out's terrified breathing apparatus, and the Professor Krill's voice trembled as he talked, his words muddled and unfocused, while Vex struggled to regain her composure. What exactly does your species perceive as frightening? Jake pondered this question for some time, while theatrically tapping his finger on his chin. Well, he began slowly, tax audits are fearsome, low on coffee, and attempting to put together IKEA furniture without the instructions. Handbook that would shatter the majority of people. After that, there was such a profound quiet that Jake thought he could hear many worldviews collapsing. Professor Krill remained still for what seemed like an eternity, as if someone had just expounded. His antenna drooped, and his compound eyes widened as he realized that mathematics was really a complex practical joke. Jake thought he saw a tiny nervous tick growing in the professor's left mandible, and the professor seemed limp. At last, Krill spoke, his voice betraying the hollowness of someone whose whole academic career had just been. In hindsight, I find your claims difficult to accept, Mr. Casually shrugged. I understand. There's a lot to take in. Here's something, Professor. How about I show you some genuine behavior of terrestrial predators, for the sake of research, prior to anyone raising an objection or running away, which many students seemed to be giving it some serious thought. Jake produced his iPad. It appeared to be a very rudimentary apparatus in comparison to the holographic screens and quantum computers strewn about the classroom, but it served its purpose. Now I should probably give you a warning, Jake remarked, perusing his files. These are just documentaries about nature. It is you. Such is the instructional programming shown to kids on Sunday mornings as they munch on sweet cereal. Vex had accomplished. Create a crystal-clear crying noise, and then reconstruct around 80% of herself into something that resembles a person. Little ones. Taken some food while watching predator videos. It is, in essence, a weekend ritual. This is a hit among children. The wall display erupted into what appeared to be a tranquil African savanna the second Jake touched his device. I understand. Here's something simple to get us started. Here we have something that looked like a little unassuming black. A white inhabitant of the grassland, leisurely ambling across it at the pace of a medium-sized dog. With spoke her. Storage space. This was her initial statement after the mountain lion encounter. It has a charming appearance. A smile spread across Jake's face as he, completely untamed, hold on a second. Watching the subsequent 60 seconds was like being a witness to a little furry end of the world. While enduring hundreds of stings, managed to fend off 2 jackals, terrify a leopard, and rip apart a beehive. A number of times before nonchalantly devouring a poisonous serpent as if it were an unusually chewy pasta. Delightful, helpful. Someone in the rear of the classroom murmured something about nothing. That, Jake stated with a click. Pride occurs when evolution abandons its pursuit of equilibrium, and instead opts to produce highly concentrated aggressiveness in. As a 20-pound bundle, honey badgers could care less about any given situation. Avoid them, lions, when a hyena is about to. Behold their approach. It has been reported that buffalo can be castrated for no other reason than an incorrect gaze. Upon leaving, Professor Qu. Erratic twitching of the antenna had started, and people live side by side with these animals. On the whole, we just ogle them from afar as they inspire online jokes. Indeed, we share this world with them. Do next video. Jake swiped. Alright, let's move on to hippos, a display. Including what appeared to be a large, blubbery river cow relaxing serenely in murky water. Multiple pupils clearly at ease. Vex expressed optimism when she eventually stabilized her crystal form into something, saying, "This looks less threatening." Returning to her former form, Jake teased Crystalline, calling her "you sweet, naive being." By feigning pity, no other huge animal in Africa is responsible for more human casualties than hippos. All 3 of them weigh 3 tons and fury capable of severing the jaws of a crocodile. One land speed limit is 30 for these, which is quicker than the average human, as well as violent, possessive of territory, and completely unconcerned about every single thing. The camera pans out to reveal a hippo's leaping out of the water with the grace of a biological torpedo with teeth the size of railroad spikes displayed in its opening jaws. Afterwards, a different hippo appeared, in a nonchalant manner having a crocodile. "What does that imply for the general public?" said in a distressed tone while seated in her tank. "That's the best part," Jake exclaimed with a positive attitude. "Until someone gets too close to them, they resemble overweight pool floaties." He swiped his finger again, and the fish transformed into aquatic killer robots. It was as if nature had pulled a cruel joke on them. Shown on the television was what appeared to be a typical backyard scene. However, let's observe if you truly desire to see some nightmare fuel. The greatest hits collection from Australia. The 20 minutes that followed were a mask for pure, concentrated horror, which, some kind of nature documentary. Jake lively commented on educational topics while funnel webs, huntsman spiders the big of dinner plates gliding carelessly over the walls of a restroom. Venomous spiders, including that can gnaw through fingernails, serpents of brown coloration that, in essence, slithering monsters with problems controlling their tempers. Jake said, "Oh, and this is a drop bear," as a koala that seemed perfectly healthy was captured on film. "No, I'm not serious. The Australians made those up to cause trouble for visitors. Considering the other inhabitants, it's surprising that anybody thought drop bears were vital." At this stage, Vex had surrendered to her humanoid shape and had fallen into a glittering pool of terrified crystal. Tara, in her aquarium, had constructed what looked like a fortress out of aquatic plants and was starring. Emerges out a narrow opening resembling a beleaguered underwater periscope. "Behold, this is a crocodile," Jake went on to say. Seeming oblivious to the psychological havoc he was inflicting, these creatures may reach a length of 23 feet and a weight of weigh more than a metric ton, possess the most powerful jaws of any terrestrial animal, and have intelligence sufficient to recall human faces. Motifs in premeditated ambushes. The locals in Australia refer to them as salties, and some individuals even keep them as pets. In his sounds like air leaking from a flat tire, Pets? No, not domestic pets. True, but it's more akin to really harmful garden decorations that may ingest. Postman, at one point, Jake cut to a close-up of a crocodile's eye, which appeared to peer deep into the skull. I have a favorite among all the students in the class. He went to see a new movie, and all of a sudden. "This is the box," the said as the screen filled with pristine ocean water, which exuded an air of tranquility and even warmth. With the zeal of someone proudly displaying newborn photos, Jake said, "Jellyfish, often known as the sea wasp. It need to enlighten you on the nomming practices in Australia. This stunning tiny creature is notoriously poisonous. Earth's fauna, tentacles that extend up to 10 feet in length are possible. You can't see it approaching since it's almost see-through, and an adult person can be fatally stung in less than 5 minutes. The camera captured the beautiful floating of the jellyfish across the ocean. Like lethal party streamers, its tentacles trail behind. Victims are meant to feel such excruciating agony that have the unfortunate tendency to experience shock and drowning prior to succumbing to the poison. Moreover, they might be located together. Well-liked swimming spots. Along the shore, Australians have set up vinegar stations in case someone takes a sting. Citric acid. Vex gurgled out of her puddle shape. Sure thing. Looks like it helps with the poison. Perhaps the fish and chips are the sole reason for it. Sauces are a bit of a mystery to Australians. Jake snapped his fingers to shut his tablet, clearly pleased. According to human standards, that is a typical weekend in nature, Professor Krill. Documentary, we present this material to students in kindergarten. For the last 10 minutes, Professor Krill had been silent. It was still frozen in place, looking blankly at the wall display, the expression of someone who has seen it all and had a limited comprehension. At long last, Tara stepped out of her plant fort just a little. "Jake," she whispered with very little volume. On par with a whisper. At this point, Jake pondered the question, how has your species not gone extinct? In a serious manner, I really believe that we're too obstinate to perish. What's more, we came up with beer. It aids in stress management. The entire lecture hall had transformed into a trauma counseling session, when Vex remains a trembling pool of crystallized unease on the ground, emitting delicate chiming noises that Jake was quite certain. Why did have the idea to study xenobiology? Build what seemed like a complex bunker system within her water tank, including what seemed to be little underwater periscopes. The few pupils who hadn't escaped during the Australian gathered in the rear corner. The fauna portion likely formed a support group for beings. Professor Krill, who had crammed too much human knowledge into too little time, stared indifferently from his platform as he at the controllers of his holographic display, as though they had betrayed him directly. His compound eyes had gone entirely. Jake began to fear that he had accidentally severed the professor's brain as he remained utterly unfocused. The resulting quiet only added to his distress. Continued until it became really unpleasant. Jake was ready to propose maybe ending it now when, at last rising to the microphone, Professor Quill spoke with the flat, despondent tone befitting a man whose entire worldview had been inputted via a wood chipper. Krill said, his gaze fixed on the controls, "I have devoted the last 47 deep into the night, analyzing predator patterns in 17 separate star systems. The hunt has been recorded by me. Characteristics of living things that have caused the demise of whole human cultures. I have included all the most horrifying echoes throughout the known cosmos." After a long time of looking down, Jake was astonished to discover what appeared to be the compound eyes betraying existential anguish through all the years of studying. Out of all the planets of death and nightmares that I have researched, nothing has ever been as casually terrifyingly hazardous as what you have. Simply outline the typical habitat of your species. Jake moved in an awkward way. It wasn't his intention to ruin the man's professional life. "Excuse me, Professor, but I'm sure there are many terrifying things in the world that..." Cut in, gesturing with a manipulator arm. "No way. A question has come to me, and I would appreciate it if you could respond." To be completely honest, of course, no problem. In all seriousness, what does your species truly think? Frightening, what causes people to feel genuine fear? Jake reclined on his chair, contemplating the matter. In a serious manner, The professor obviously placed a high value on this, for after inadvertently destroying the man's life's work, he reasoned that he should give him the honest truth. Well, Jake said, tax audits are very nerve-wracking. We'll face down the feeling of helplessness that comes from having a government officer scrutinize your financial data. Grizzly bears throughout the day, but when we're confined to a room with an IRS inspector, we become trembling wrecks, Professor Krill said. Repeated blinking, accounting review I see, documentation-based. Fear is our Achilles heel. Oh, and we're almost out of coffee. Most people would consider that a true emergency. We run out of steam in the absence of coffee. For some people, the ingestion of even a single cup of coffee before drink my morning joe. Dependency on caffeine, Quill reiterated, weekly and calls made to customer service. You know it's bad when simply talking to another person requires you to go through 17 separate menus. People, and then they'll keep you on wait for half an hour while playing music that sounds like it was made by someone who, from her humble abode on the floor, actively despises the idea of music. It was a jumbled chime noise. Something is wrong with me. Your physical survival is not endangered by these things, Jake beamed. Human mind is full with lovely ironies like that. Vex, we're willing to willingly leap off of fully operational planes for amusement, but get us to cancel an insurance claim over the phone, and we'll put it off for months. Because it's quite stressful. Oh, Jake continued, getting more invested in the subject, and putting together IKEA furniture without the handbook. That's essentially psychological warfare posing as a home repair project. Somehow we keep buying flat-pack furniture and the Swedish have weaponized it, Tara said, her voice rising from her watery habitat. Stronghold barely heard but noticeable. I'm beginning to worry that your species is completely bonkers. Yeah, it's a very reasonable appraisal, Jake enthusiastically concurred. We're essentially on a cosmic level of lunacy, yet we're functionally insane. It's similar to being the most accomplished psychopaths in the cosmos, with the exception that we often direct our madness towards extreme sports and Professor Krill had once again become silent, but this time it was due to the most intricate practical pranks. Calmness of someone whose brain is actively processing data, as opposed to the stuporous stillness of someone whose brain has. At last he spoke out. I believe it's time we had an honest conversation regarding your academic placement. Jake's hand went up in an raise an eyebrow. Am I being expelled from xenobiology class for terrifying my fellow students? On the contrary. Quill's antennas were beginning to reawaken, like withered flowers receiving their initial spritz of water. I'm endorsing your swift promotion to the position of advanced survival instructor. Hold for a second. You're now serving as a in just one class time, you have shown that you know more about the behavior of top predators than the majority of your classmates. Degree holders earn in 4 years. You have also demonstrated that people have an innate sense of when they are in danger. Investigation that embarrasses our most advanced threat analysis technologies. Professor Quill really returned a glimmer of intellectual enthusiasm to his complex eyes as he straightened up, and Jake could see that. Our team at Galactic Academy has spent decades perfecting survival programs, and we're still going strong. Planets that we deemed slightly dangerous ended up losing inhabitants. It seems our threat assessment models are set up for species that you want me to instruct others on how to survive perilous winds, which you classify as a natural disaster. Worlds, I implore you to instruct them on human thought processes. Examine this enormous, potentially lethal beast, and coolly determine if it poses a genuine threat or is simply acting out of character. Hair Day, the art of hearing noises that would stun most sentient creatures and identifying them as. Jake thought about it and he thought, that sounds pretty cool. Does it mean I get to show more? Does it mean you may show them nature documentaries or anything you believe would help them cope with the afterlife? Rational investigation, rational definition, the antenna of Professor Quill somewhat drooped. I ask that you withhold all Australian-related materials until at least week 3 so that I have time to make arrangements for further medical assistance. Jake scoffed, all right, I'll take care of right now if it's only fair to begin with the most exemplary kind of indifference if you're trying to educate them about actual predators. The lecture hall's intercom suddenly sprang open as if on cue. "Hey everyone, this is Dean Weave. Note many claims of mental anguish originating from room 7. Could you kindly verify your state?" As he surveyed his frightened classroom, Professor Krill noticed that Vex was still pulling. Lying on the floor, tending to her underwater fortress, and the few surviving pupils clustered together as if they were survivors. Dean, in a fit of cosmic terror, turned on his communication device. "Our human exchange student has recently shown that she is competent enough to instruct. Thus everything is well here, Professor Quill. Survival 101, who could be more competent than all of our present teachers put together." After a lengthy silence, over the intercom, "Excuse me, but have you just said that an exchange student in their first year is more adept at survival training than what we refer to as sophisticated survival methods are actually just ordinary things that people do in their daily lives, teen. In light of extensive work experience, I propose that we completely revamp our curriculum as of this coming Tuesday. Please come to my office after class so that we may have a meeting to talk about this. You have taken on additional duties as a teacher." Jake got to his feet and retrieved his rudimentary tablet, beaming as he beheld the sight of intellectual chaos all around him. "Well, I must say this has been rather instructive. See you next week at the same time, Professor Quill." "I'm not sure next week will even be an option. The sound is like kitten. I got the impression that you will be occupied with instructing people on how to endure in a cosmos that is reportedly far more perilous than we had previously anticipated." Jake, on his way out the door, stopped and turned back to his stunned classmates. "Hey, before I leave, anybody interested in hearing about Florida?" he said. It was likely audible on seismic equipment, 3 times over the volume of the collective no, from every aware human in the room. Downstairs, Jake chuckled all the way to the dean's office.